can't see how good looking it is. That's bad.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Very well built. I can look spiritual.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's all appearance anyway.
Yeah, it's all appearance.
Especially when
Tony, when the apparent me disappears and there's only this, everything seems to be perfect and there's only light and feelings and noises and everything seems to be okay.
Well, it isn't quite like that. Anyway, all there is, let's just say, all there is this, is what is. Yeah.
Of course. And when the me comes back, first, when the me comes back, the apparent me, there's first this feeling of satisfaction. Oh, this was very great.
Oh, right.
And after some while, you want to have more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you come back in this game, longing and wishing. And of course, this is as well just what happens.
Yes. You're describing what I call
Yeah.
awakening prior to
Yes.
liberation.
Yes. But when the me is back, and you are back, and the apparent me is back in this game, it does not feel like
Doesn't feel good. There's separation.
yes.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And you cannot do anything.
Well, there is no you. No, this absolutely is not saying you can't do anything. This message has never said you can't do anything. Lots of teachers like to believe that Tony Parsons is saying that you can't do anything. Those words have never been, that idea has never been suggested. Because how could this say you can't do anything when it's absolutely obvious that there's no you? No, there's no you. There's no you is miles away from you can't do anything. Because the idea that you can't do anything implies that there's a you that can't do anything, and there isn't. And also implies that there's something that can or can't be done, and there isn't.
Without me, it is very clear. But when the me is back, the feeling of me, you are in this searching game as well. And you don't feel like this is just a separate happening.
You don't feel like what?
I think that the coming back of the me is as well just life appearing as me.
It's what seems to happen. Yeah.
Yes, but it don't feel like this.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And no amount of concepts about it, no amount of ideas that is just the expression of wholeness or any use at all. Because there's still a sense of being separate.
have a concept to share. I had a teacher who always said, you don't need liberation. It is your mind that needs to be, wants liberation. Because it is in a misunderstanding. Can you please comment on that?
Well, I don't know what the mind is. Show me your mind.
I can't.
No, the mind, I don't think there is such a thing as a mind, but there is an energetic sense of being separate, which brings a longing for wholeness. There might be an interpretation through the brain of that, but for me, there isn't such a thing as a mind. There's a collection of belief systems and an imagined idea about who I am and what enlightenment is like or liberation is like. But for me, the idea that the mind only wants liberation is a very shallow idea. As far as this is concerned, essentially separation is an apparent energy. It's nothing apparently emerging as an energy that seems to be separate. So it's an energy, it's embodied in the heart, it's embodied, it's a cellular thing. It comes and goes, it's very inconstant, every day it's there and it's not there. But it certainly isn't an idea or a thought or a belief of the mind.
It seems it just brought confusion to me.
What has?
That the mind needs liberation.
Yeah. It's a very shallow idea as far as I'm concerned. It's really based on the idea that the mind has a thought or an idea about liberation and wants it, but I think it's far deeper than that. There's a deep, in the tiny child there is no identity, there's just life happening. There's no sense of anyone. Hunger and anger can happen in a tiny child, but there's just life happening. And then suddenly there's an energy that is just free floating, and then suddenly it seems to contract in the body of the tiny child, and there's a sense of being separate from life, which is huge. It's so huge that most people don't even remember it. They don't want to remember that, because it's like a huge, seems to be like a huge exclusion from wholeness. And directly that happens, directly that energy seems to happen. And that brings about a huge longing to come back home. And that creates this whole thing of, I long to be at home. But it also creates an artificial structure called me, which thinks that it can get home. And that's when the shit hits the fan. Because because it's a sort of game. It's an awful game where the me, because of the nature of me living in an artificial construct, which is subject object, it simply cannot get home. And that's the sort of irony of this whole thing, the way it's supposed to be.
Thank you.
So how come after liberation there doesn't happen another contraction of energy like it did?
Because liberation doesn't happen. It's the apparent end of something that wasn't real. When that apparent end of something that wasn't real is all that's left, then there is nothing left. There's nothing left but what is. Now, there isn't anything that's in that what is, there just is what is. In what is, there's everything. In everything, there's anger and separation. But it's no longer something that happens to an object or a me. There is no me, there's just what is.
I can't understand it.
No. It doesn't matter.
Tony, what's going on? What's happening in individuals who feel they are liberated?
What goes on in somebody that feels they're liberated is that they're not liberated. situation.
So there's a difference, there seems to be a difference between...
It's a story. If somebody feels they're liberated, they're in the story of having become liberated.
So it's just a different state.
It's a state within the story.
Yeah.
It has no relevance to liberation at all. Because after liberation there's only unknowing. So there can't be something that knows it's liberated. I mean, we're really talking about something that doesn't happen. In a sense, you could say the only thing that happened is that the idea that someone isn't liberated, or the idea that somebody could become liberated, simply collapses. The whole idea that there's something separate that could become liberated just is a fallacy. And it collapses and there's nothing left. All that's left, in answer to that question, is all that's left is everything. There isn't anybody in the everything. All that's left is everything.
And that would make sense that anybody engaging in an endeavour to get anywhere is in the story.
Yeah. That's why it's not therefore possible to entertain the idea anymore that there is someone who needs to do something to become liberated. Because as far as this is concerned, there isn't anybody in this room. There is no one in this room. But somebody might put out their hand, I'm a person, and claim to be. And obviously a lot of the questions are based on the feeling that there is someone sitting there, and what can I do about it? But as far as this is concerned, there's nobody sitting there. There's nobody there. There's just a body. It's just a thing that's there. And therefore, the idea of this saying to that thing, which is completely perfect and whole, that it needs to change to become completely whole, is absolutely ridiculous. Not only is there nobody here, but there's nothing to be done. How can there be anything to be done when this is already everything? And this is already whole. This is already fulfilled. So the whole basis of all teachings of becoming is from a sense of a me here that has become something. Sincerely helping other people to become that. So the confusion is very sincere.
But also, if an individual goes from a state of torment or unhappy, disconnected or unhappy or longing, and they believe, they shift dramatically to a place which feels free, it's easy to see why they would think that.
Of course it is. Yeah. Of course it is. It's similar to therapy. I mean, therapy is a very intelligent way of making the prison more comfortable. And there can be things that can happen to a person and they can reach a state that's much more comfortable than the one they were in before. The only problem for that is that it's in a story, therefore it's transient, because it's a state that's moving around in a circle. And what hasn't been dealt with, what's been dealt with is the symptom of separation in therapy, not the root of the problem, if you like. So there's a state reached in therapy, which then comes and goes.
So does everything go back to a deep grief at being separated?
Yeah, of course. Separation is at the root of all suffering and fear.
I have another one. Could fear of death or pain be a gateway to liberation?
No, there isn't a gateway. There isn't a gateway. But to suggest the idea of there being a gateway is linked or married to the idea that there's a path. If there's a gateway, there must be a path leading to it, or there must be an approach. There's a new fangled idea around now, based mainly on self-inquiry. There's a lot of apparently non-dual teachers in the world. The only interesting thing is that non-duality can't be taught, but there are a lot of non-dual teachers. And one of the things they call a process called self-inquiry, mainly, is that they put a heading over it called the direct approach, as though the other approaches are indirect, but there is a way in which you can directly approach your own absence. Can you imagine that? And so, in some sense or other, the idea is introduced that you can ask the question, who am I, and so on. But, of course, that's all based on the idea that there is someone who can choose to ask the question, who am I? Which, again, is a fallacy.
I've wasted a lot of time then.
Yeah, I did that as well, yeah. I went in for all of that, and I also tried to stay in awareness. Have you tried that? You can do it for up to 3 minutes sometimes. And then 3 weeks later, you think, oh God, I haven't been aware for 3 weeks. Oh God, I must try harder. It's like being in the now. It's the same thing. It's just ridiculous. But it's very attractive to the mind. And of course, the other wonderful thing about the direct approach is there's some idea that you can move. Even the word approach is a movement towards something. If you're moving towards what you're looking for, how far do you leap? And what? But the very movement of moving forward is already what is. So it's a fallacy.
So, is it correct to say that in the shallow domain of that game, of the shallow, the surfacey domain of cause and effect, the goal of those pointers are just to create momentary relaxation, like who's asking the question, and then the question falls for a while, or is awareness present, and that creates a great sense of relaxation.
I don't know what you're actually talking about at the moment.
Oh, I'm talking about, you were just talking about the non-validity of direct pointing, for example, or direct approach. Yeah. So I see in my mind, for example, a lot of questions that cuts the question, and maybe the me asking the question.
Intention. You mean that's the intention?
Is it the intention?
No, there is no intention. No, out of nothing, there's no intention. So there's no agenda here. And there's no intention in anything that seems to happen or come out of this body. If there was an intention, then we're back into the teaching of becoming.
No, of course. So what I was asking is the validity, not here, but the pointers, like the question, who asks the question, for example. You know, it seems to create, or sitting in awareness, I think it's the same. It seems to drop the me for a while and give a sense of relaxation.
And that is the intention.
I'm wondering if...
well, obviously I would have thought it must be.
Yeah.
If that's the intention of asking a question, who is asking, da-da-da-da-da, that's the intention. It is a teaching of becoming.
Right, okay.
So it's completely keeping people in the story.
Yes.
Even if momentary relaxation happens, it's just another part of a story of me entering another state called relaxation. It's completely futile.
Yes. Thank you.
Wonderfully futile.
So if I have no longer any urge to have a reference point.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
This is me now that no longer has any urge.
No, I mean if I have no longer any urge.
But you're referring to a me that's there, are we? So that I know where I am with this. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, in general, if one has no longer any urge for having a reference point to solidify any point of view or anything, and one is, all fixation has dropped, then one is free.
Well, it's a funny way of describing it. I could never describe it like that.
No more reference point where you identify with.
No, but there's a longing. You know, having no reference point wouldn't eliminate the longing to come home. Just means that you don't have any reference points about where home is or where it isn't. I don't understand the significance of having no reference.
So I think it was what he was saying about pointers, helpful methods.
There aren't any.
Yeah, so when I'm able to drop everything, I don't need it.
Well, you can't drop anything because you are the one that wants to gain something. Me can only function as the seeker of something. That's its function. If there's no me, then that whole function collapses with it. But all the time there is a me that's separate. Its only function is to seek home. That is what it's there for. It's an appearance, of course, but it has nothing. There's nothing else it can do but seek only.
I also cannot realize that there's no longer any fixation, or is that a fixation?
I don't see quite the relevance of what's a fixation?
Fixation means that I solidify things or reify things.
For me, a fixation is an idea about something fixed.
Yes, an idea or an emotion or a feeling.
It's a fairly shallow part of what we're talking about here. A fixation about an idea or something is really only information. We're talking about an embodied longing, an embodied separation that longs to come home. Fixation doesn't even come near it. It's just an idea. Longing isn't an idea, it's longing.
Can I not get fixed on that?
You can have a fixed idea if you like, you can have anything you like. But it's not, to me, it's so inconsequential to not be worth discussing, really. Because I'm trying to say that the longing to come home is far deeper than an idea. The idea, I know people who come to these meetings and they drop the idea that they're going to become liberated, but it's still only a concept. They've dropped the fixation, if you like, of them becoming enlightened, but there's still a longing. It hasn't solved the longing. They can walk around and say, I'm not going to become enlightened anymore. But, there's still a longing in their body.
But can I not be fixated
on
this longing? I mean, this feeling.
You can be anything you like.
Yeah, but if this is no longer there, then it's...
Well, I've just explained that what is no longer there is the idea of you becoming enlightened. So you walk round having dropped the idea that you won't become, having dropped the idea that you will become enlightened. For a little while, it's quite a relief, but only for a little while. It's just another concept. This is beyond the concept. This is beyond any pointers. This is beyond anything we're even talking about. You can't talk about this. You can't get near this. You can't get near this because it's already everything. Wow.
You just said that stepping on the approach for an
early
question. So just being in this movement to this approach, is it?
There isn't anything that isn't it. There isn't anything that isn't it, because it is everything.
So every second, or there's no second, but it's
everything is it. Everything, and everything is an awful lot. Everything is that, including the seeking of it. The seeking of it is it. Isn't that fabulous? That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, I think it is anyway.
So, Nico, I was just to ask you, as you're speaking about longing there, it occurs to me that the longing, does it hide in a way by actually being there all the time, but not being observed, not being, like, it's actually there all the time, but sometimes it's only registered when it spikes in something big, and you go, oh, you can feel the longing, but in fact, the truth is, if you're separate, then whether you're longing through a cup of tea or a comfortable place to sit, or it's there all the time.
Longing is a constant longing.
It's not detected.
Often it's not detectable because it's overlaid by things that can happen. And don't forget, the other thing is that actually me is not a permanent fixture. In the day and in deep sleep, there is no me, there's no longing. In deep sleep, there's nothing that longs because there's nothing there at all. So every night we have a rest from being this absolutely ghastly me. But even in the day, there are things that are activities, and there can be times when there is no me, but that's not apparent, obviously, it just is.
If you were to feel, if you were